Hello. Today we are going to be going through the steps for creating a new award in Kuali Research. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to click on Central Admin, and we're going to go over to this Post Award section, and under Award we're going to press the plus button. So here we are in our new award document. So the first thing we need to do is enter a description. You can put in really whatever description you want to put in. You should follow whatever the naming conventions are that your institution uses. So the next thing is we're going to scroll down a little bit and look at our funding proposals. Now you'll notice here under proposal merge type that we have initial funding. So the first time that you fund an award, this is going to be your only option. Later on, we'll have some other options, and I'll talk through what those are when we get to that point. So we're going to come here to our institutional proposal number, and we're going to do a search. Now, I know in this case that I created the proposal that I'm going to be using to fund this today, but whatever information you have about the proposal, you can use to search. The unit, the title, what the actual IP number is, if you have that available, you can use any of those details to search. So we're going to do created from, and I have a budget that I set up today and an institutional proposal to pull information into award. So we're going to click return value, and that's pulled our institutional proposal number back into this field. If you knew the number exactly, you could just enter it in here, but then you run into the risk of data entry errors. I find looking it up is a little bit easier. So we're going to come over here and press the add button. And now we have the details of the proposal that we linked. Now this is very high level, but we can look at this and we can see generally what the proposed direct cost and indirect cost was for the first period, as well as for the overall period of the proposal. I do want to take a moment to look at what the other merge types are. Now that we have funded this award once, that this award has been saved. If you save with no IP or if you fund with the first IP, this change will happen in both of those instances. Instead of initial funding, we have no change, merge, and replace. If you link an institutional proposal and choose no change, then it'll link it. It will be connected to the award. It'll show up in Medusa, but it won't actually change any of the information in the award. Instances where this might be useful is if you're doing a supplement and you're keeping overall the whole award in a single node. You're not using hierarchy. You don't actually want it to change the data. You just want to fund that supplement. Or if you're doing some other small administrative change that did require you to submit something back to the sponsor, and so you created an IP to track that action, you would probably use no change. In the case of merge, that's most commonly used in instances where you're doing a personnel change and you want to merge in, say, new key persons or a new co-investigator that's been added, but you don't really want to change anything else about the award. Once you merge in the new individual, you may have to tinker with your credit split a little bit, but if you just wanted to route a document to add one co-investigator on a project that had a lot of personnel and you didn't want to have to list all of those personnel, that's a case where merge might be worthwhile. In the case of replace, you're going to replace all of the information in the award. In my experience, this is one of the scenarios that's used less often, but occasionally you would need to use that, and all of the information that is normally populated by an initial funding will be replaced if you use the replace option. The one exception is the sponsor field is not replaced when you use that option. So we're going to go ahead and close our funding proposals panel, and we're going to go to details and dates. So the first thing we want to do is select our transaction type. Since this is a brand new award, we're going to want to select new, and then choose our notice date. Common use of notice date is the day that the award actually came into the office. There are other uses for this. This can drive reporting, so you should enter the notice date that matches your institution's processes. So we're going to come here, and I'm going to go ahead and put today's date. You can enter information in this comments field as well in the current action panel. This comments field will be wiped out every time you version the award. This is really meant to be associated with this particular transaction, not with the award overall. So I can come here and do year 1 of 5 funding. And now we know that this represents the first year of funding. Next, we're going to come down into the institution panel. We want to set our award status. So I'm going to set that to active. And we can see some of the information that's pulled in from the proposal. The title has pulled in. We can select an account type or not. This is an optional field, but I'm going to put regular. We can see the activity type and lead unit have pulled in, which is good. And I'm going to come to award type and indicate that this is a grant. The sponsor ID has pulled in. And then if there was a prime sponsor, CFDA number, other information, it would have pulled in as well. I created a relatively simple proposal for this case. We would probably have a CFDA number for an NSF grant. So I'll go ahead and put that in there. And you can put in the other information as appropriate. We're not going to worry about the sponsor funding transferred panel. That's for a use case where you have a faculty member that is transferred to your institution from another institution and brought their grants in progress. And if you want to track that information, you can do that there, but it wouldn't be typical for a brand new grant. So next, we're going to come down to the time and money panel. Now, depending on how your institution has configured this panel, some of these fields may not be available here. Obligation start and end date and the actual monetary fields may not be editable. In this case, we're going to go ahead and put in our project start date and project end date. I'm going to do a 5-year project. Starting at the beginning of next month. I'm not going to put in the obligation start or end date or any of the amounts. And the reason for that is I'm going to demonstrate how to do that with the time and money module in a future video. So for now, we're just going to put in the basic information necessary to get an award started. So next, we're going to go down to subawards. You'll notice there are kind of 2 portions to this panel. There's approved subawards, and then there's subawards where this award is a funding source. The approved subawards section is really just meant to capture subawards that are intended to be part of this award, high level, organization name, and amount. The subawards where this award is a funding source will be dealt with in a later video, and this is where information for actual subaward Kuali documents that have been linked to this award will display. So we're going to start out and just list a subaward here that we expect to be part of this award. So I'm going to look up Purdue, and we're going to select the Purdue Research Foundation and say we're expecting a small subaward, $5,000. And then we can see that that's added here, and we know that this is now included on this particular award, and we can track that in the future. So let's go ahead and close that panel. We'll close a couple of these other panels too. Just to make the screen a little bit more manageable. And then we can come down to sponsor template. Now, the purpose of a sponsor template is to populate data automatically in the rest of the award document. This is data like your reports, your terms, your sponsor contacts that might be the same on several similar awards. So you can create a template that will allow you to save a lot of time and data entry effort. So we're going to come in here and I'm going to do a search for sponsor template code 1, and we have a test sponsor template, and this will let me show you the various places in the award document where the template populates information. I'm going to hit apply, and it's going to ask me to confirm that I do indeed want to apply this sponsor template. I will say yes. It pulled in a little bit of cost share information from the IP, and so it did want to confirm that yes, I wanted to overwrite that. I said yes, that's really only going to overwrite the cost share comments, and that's fine. So we're going to come back up to the top. Now, one thing I do want to point out, at this point, and you'll notice up here in award ID, I have all zeros. The award still has not been saved. The first time that I either press the Save button here, or navigate to a new tab. The document will be saved. That took a little bit longer because it was the first save of the award, so it was creating all of the database information in the back end. We can now look up here and see that an award ID has been assigned 000341. We have our award. We can move forward now. So if I look at this first panel on the Contacts tab, this has pulled in my PI from my proposal. Again, I was doing a pretty simple proposal, so in this case, we just have one personnel entry, but if you had a list of personnel, co-investigators, key persons, multiple PIs, they would be listed here as well. We can see I also have a simple credit split because there's only one investigator. They've not broken their credit split down between units, which is fine. But if I had broken credit split down between Bloomington campus and psychology in the proposal, you would see that reflected here. The next area is unit contacts. This is where you can list information on individual contacts in the various units, people who you know are going to be responsible for any grants, for providing admin support to your researchers in a given unit. You can list those people here. If I sync to lead unit, it's going to ask me, do I want to replace all my contacts? And I do. It's automatically pulled in the individuals that are listed on the unit administrator table with unit type contacts. It's also pulled in central admin contacts automatically, which is great. So that can save you a lot of time if you know it's going to be the same people. Similar to your sponsor template, you can sort of have a template built out of the individuals at your university that are responsible for grants and apply them very quickly to your awards. You can also look up additional sort of individuals who might need to be on specific awards and add those in addition to the unit contacts that are on all awards for a given unit. So we're going to go ahead and close some of these panels. And then we're going to look at our sponsor contacts. So these pulled in from the template. These are the individuals that are associated with this particular template. You might have one of these for R01s or DOD, and you know that you have specific contacts at the sponsor that you're going to go back to regularly, and so you can have them populate automatically. Finally, there's central administration contacts. Now, these are not editable, unlike the other two contact sections. You notice I don't have a delete, and I don't have a mechanism to add more. The central admin contacts are assigned by unit, and they are only assigned automatically. So if you provision responsibility by unit within your OSP office, then this is a great mechanism. If you don't assign awards this way, then there are a couple other ways to look at assigning awards. You can create a custom data field. You can do some other things to identify the individual who's responsible for a given award, but the Central Administration Contacts tab only assigns based on unit. Next, we're going to go to the Commitments tab. The first section of the Commitments tab is for cost sharing. And here you can list a lot of information. You can list your type of cost sharing. In this particular environment, we have several different types of cost sharing. You might have a list this long. You might only have a few different types, but that will be defined by your institution. You can indicate what percentage of the cost sharing any given line is, what the project period is within a multi-period award that this cost sharing applies to. You can track both the source account and the destination account for the cost share if it is actively being transferred and tracked within your institution. You can list the amount of cost share being committed and then also track how much of that cost share has actually been met, the date that it's verified, and list the unit that's providing the cost share. So in this case, no cost share pulled forward from the proposal. These are fields that are included in the proposal, and we're not necessarily going to include any cost share here, but I did want to talk through what those options were. Next is the rates section. Rates is a tab that will pull forward your unrecovered F&A entries from any linked proposal. If there are not unrecovered F&A entries, nothing will pull forward here. You can track all of your F&A rates here if you would like, or if you're using the award budget, you can track your F&A rates in the award budget itself. This panel is used differently by different institutions, so you'll want to think about how you want to use this at your particular institution, but it is an area where you can keep track of rates in the system if you would like. So we can come here, we can put in whatever the percentage that's appropriate. We can list what type of rate it is. So we can say it's MTDC in this case, say it applies to fiscal year 2018. We can list specific start dates and end dates for the rates. Depending on how you've actually negotiated your rates, the start and end dates might be different from institution to institution, which is why we have that set up that way. Although when we click on this, you will see that the dates did populate automatically based on the fiscal year. We can indicate whether this is on or off campus. And again, we can list a source and destination account if we are tracking the actual transfer of unrecovered F&A. And then we can list unrecovered F&A if appropriate. In this case, I don't actually want to add rates here. Later on, we will be entering an award budget, and I'll be tracking rates there as well. We can also come down here and track our benefit rates both on and off campus and include comments on that information. The next panel is pre-award authorizations. There are some grants where you are allowed to spend on the grant before it is fully awarded. There are a number of reasons for this. Not all schools have a policy where they allow for that, but if your institution does have a policy that allows for pre-award expenditures, you do want to track that both the sponsor and the institution has authorized those expenditures, and this is where you can track that information. You can indicate the amount that you're authorized to spend before the fully executed award is completed, the effective date of when that can begin happening, and any detailed comments both from the sponsor and the institution generally. We're going to skip budget versions. The reason we'll be skipping budget versions is you can't actually create a budget until you have a fully approved award with time and money information entered. So we're going to go to Payments, Reports, and Terms. If we go to Payments and Invoices, you'll see that the payment basis has been populated automatically from our sponsor template. It's listed as cost reimbursement, and the payment method has also automatically been populated. We can go down and see that there are several other options, and nothing stops us from changing the information. Sometimes you might apply a sponsor template, and 95% of what's in the template is correct, but on that given award, you might want to change a few details. That's perfectly acceptable. The system will let you do that. The next area lists the invoice types. And again, these invoicing types pulled forward from the sponsor template. This is really the area where you can save a lot of data entry time if you know that a given award type is going to have similar invoicing or reporting requirements. So we can see what the types are that are listed, that they have a frequency. That frequency might only be one report in the case of a final report, but it gives you an idea of when it will be due, 90 days after expiration, 60 days after, and then the date that that's being calculated on. So in this case, it's calculating on project end date, but it could calculate on obligation end date. Project being the entire period that is expected for the whole project, obligation being the period of time that has actually been approved for spending. So for a final report, you'd expect that to be project end date, but there are exceptions. Then you can indicate whether you just need a sponsor form, a report and letter, a report, or a letter only. You can list a due date, although in this case, the due date will be calculated based on the frequency and frequency base, but there are instances where you have ad hoc reports or ad hoc invoices, and if you were doing an as required report, you would manually enter the due date. And then we can have invoice instructions. Later on, we'll see the full payment schedule calculated when I do the video on award report tracking, but for now, we just want to look at basic setup. We're not going to be looking at contracts and grants billing today. That's part of the Kuali financial system integration and maybe the subject of later documentation. For now, we're not going to focus on that. Next, we're going to look at reports. Reports are really set up the exact same way as invoices. The population of the final schedule looks a little bit different. Invoicing is set up specifically for the purpose of invoicing. Reports are set up to be managed separately, but the actual configuration is the same. The type, the frequency, and the frequency base. I do want to come down and look here at annual and some of the other frequencies that are available, bi-monthly, semi-annual, and see over here some of the other frequency bases you might see on a non-final report, where if you were to do monthly or annually after an obligation start date, those would begin calculating based on the start of the project instead of the end of the project. But aside from that, the options are really identical to the invoicing section. Again, in a later video, we'll be going over what the full population of these schedules look like and how you manage that information. So we're going to hide the reports. You do have to have one report listed on an award in order to finalize it, but you only need one. Next, we're going to look at terms. So this is where you would list the various terms in the award agreement itself. So if we go down and look, all of these terms have been populated from the sponsor template. A lot of institutions find that while it is very useful to categorize all the terms like this on certain awards, they may not want to do that on all awards. And so some institutions will set up a term for each category called "See Notice of Award for Details" or something along those lines. You do have to enter at least one term in each of these sections in order to finalize the award. So this is an area we're setting up a few sponsor templates, at least a basic sponsor template that will populate that term that I mentioned above about "See the Notice of Award" for each category can save you a lot of data entry time. And then if you do want to track specific terms for certain awards, or in some cases you might want to track it for all of your awards, then you can set up templates that list out more specific terms so that you can populate that and include that on award notices to your departments. Next is special approval. There are two types of special approval, and that's for approved equipment when you're purchasing very expensive equipment, or foreign travel that might need special approval either based on institutional policies or from the sponsor. You can come here and list the details of the equipment or the travel so that you can track that that approval has been received. The last section of this particular tab is closeout. You'll see here we have due dates for the final reports in our various report classes or categories. And so we can come down here when we're ready to close out the award and go through and track when we've done the final submission of all of our final reports. Once all of that is recorded and accounted for, then we know we can close out our award. So next, we're going to go over and we're going to look at special review. So special review does pull in data from the proposal. In this case, I didn't include special review in the proposal because I wanted to kind of talk through building out exactly what special review would be field by field. So this includes any review that's required on the research that goes beyond the grants office. Human subjects review, animal research review, biohazardous material review, or radioactive review. Those sorts of additional approvals that may be necessary for a given piece of research. You can list the type of review that's happening. You can list the approval status. So say we've confirmed that it's approved. We want to put in our protocol number, indicate when the application took place, when approval actually happened, and what the expiration date is for that research. Then when the next year of funding comes around, perhaps this particular protocol, as we documented it here, was expired, but we can go back to the biosafety office, give them the protocol number, and see whether or not it's been renewed. And so this acts as a good check to make sure that all of those required approvals are in place. We can also list exemption and put in comments if appropriate. When we're done, we're going to want to hit the Add button. and that will add that to the award, and we can add as many special review items as are appropriate, as some research might have quite a few. The next page is custom data. This is a page where any special fields that your particular institution has set up that need to be filled out will be present on this particular tab. And they'll be broken down into different panels depending on what they've set up. So we can kind of look and see at what those fields look like. A couple of these fields are required, I can tell, because they have an asterisk on them. So I am making sure to put values in all of the required fields, or I won't be able to finalize my awards. But in this case, I'm going to go ahead and leave the rest of those blank. The next section is comments, notes, and attachments. So if we come down here, we can look at the comments section. We see we have general comments, fiscal report comments, and these have pulled in comments directly from our sponsor template. These can be listed on outputs that can be sent to the department. And so there might be standard guidance that your institution wants to send out to departments, standardized language, and they might always include that on comments of given types. And it might vary by sponsor, so it could be slightly different on each sponsor template, and that's why those can be set up to go to the comments fields. You can also customize which comments are available, so your institution might have slightly different comment sections than this. The next area is notes. This is really just where you want to put random notes about the award, details that you don't necessarily have anywhere else to put. They aren't part of the formal award structure, but you just want to include a record of a conversation or something that came up related to this award so it can be referenced later. The final area is attachments. You'll have a series of attachment types. It will likely be a different list than this because each institution can configure their own attachment types. Choose Other Document. We can list our formal award, and we can then search for a document and attach it in the same manner you would any browser or in your email. And so this is how you can collect attachments on a given award. So if I click here, I'll go ahead and just include an attachment of, that image. We can add that. And then we'll look at this again after we finalize our award, because the way you can interact with the attachments varies a little bit from the rest of the document. So next, I'm going to come to the award actions section. And we can come here and go to data validation and turn on our validation. And we can see we have no errors and no warnings. So we are good to finalize our award. So if I go down here, I can press the submit button. Now that I've pressed the submit button, we can see that our award is en route. So if we go down and look at the route log, that's because this particular award is set up to have approval requirements. So there are a couple different things that we can do here. If I go to super user actions, because I'm a super user, I can approve for those individuals. I'm going to go ahead and do that for the purpose of this particular demo, but normally the members of this gift administrators group or role would come in and they would do the final approval on this award. And then at that point, it would be finalized and we'd be able to move forward and do the rest of the work we need to do on the award. In this case, I'm going to click here under Approve. Under the annotation, say, I'm approving for the gift administrators. You do have to put an annotation to take super user action, and I'm going to take the selected actions for them. So now I have taken that super user action. We may need to reload once. And now we can see our document is final. It takes a second sometimes for the workflow engine to complete all of its actions. So now that we have fully approved this particular award, then we can go back to comments, notes, and attachments. And I do want to point out that the comments, like the rest of the fields in the award, are now non-editable. We would have to create a new version of this award to make changes to the comments or the majority of the fields in the award. With the exception of attachments, I can still come here and I can mark an attachment as voided, although I cannot delete it when I'm not actually in an editable version, because we wouldn't want to get rid of an attachment and never be able to come back and get it. That would be a bit of an audit risk, but we can add new attachments. There are a lot of cases where you just get a document, something that needs to be attached for record, but you don't want to create a whole new version because that's a little bit of a reporting liability. You don't want to track an action, and it's a lot of data entry. So to get around those issues, it is possible to add attachments without actually versioning the award. But aside from that, our award is finished at this point, and next we will be able to do a time and money document to add money and set up the actual obligation dates for the award. We'll be taking those actions in the next video, and I hope that you will come back and watch that video and continue with the process.